Okay, good afternoon. Our special guests, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first series of the Edo Youth Development Series by the Nigerian Youth Parliament. My name is Honorable Daniel Uwadie, and today I'm your host. First, a brief history of the Nigerian Youth Parliament. The Nigerian Youth Parliament was head of in 2008 by the then President Musa Yar'Adua, and since then we are currently in the fourth section of the Nigerian Youth Parliament. It's a replica of the National Senate and with 109 members, including the FCT. And the whole today program, we're focusing on youth leadership and capacity building. We have two special guests in the house, Najib Waziri and Osase Eroma. They'll be doing justice to that discussion for today. The aim of this series is to create a platform for young leaders and professionals to pass knowledge and experience to Edo youth, and that is basically it. We're going to be having interactive sections. Questions will be coming in, and we are ready to take those questions. And with your collaboration, let's just have fun today. So I present to you Osase Eroma. Before she comes live, I'll be taking her citation. So Osase Eroma was born in Benin City and is a graduate research assistant at Department of Integrated and Information Technology, University of South Carolina. She has a BSc in biology and a concentration in pre-medicine and an ongoing master's in health information technology. Osase volunteers for education program. She served underprivileged children. She presently works as a healthcare IT researcher and focuses on grooming young adults for future leadership roles. Osase has held political positions at the university level, served as an elected Student Union Association president during her undergraduate degree. Osase is also co-owns an education girl child program that focuses on female children and help them with continued education to keep them off the streets in Benin City, Edo State. Osase has vast knowledge in methods of operations of power, leadership roles, and workplace learning, politics. She's a life coach, she's a chef, and overall an enthusiast. I present to you Osase Eroma. Thank you very much.
Good morning, and thank you, Daniel, for such a warm introduction. Greetings to everybody who's online and joining us this morning, and I hope that you use this as a learning opportunity for self-development as we talk about capacity building. Let's dive right into it. When we talk about capacity, we are talking about an investment into effective and sustainable future of an entity. An entity is, whatever it required to bring units to the next level of efficient operations. There are some keywords on that first part when it comes to investing into effective and sustainable future. The word effective, sustainable, entity, and then efficient. For something to be effective, it has to be adequate or capable to produce desired outcomes or results. It has to be sustainable as well, which means you have to maintain it at a certain level or consistency. And then the entity of which you are investing into is a system that exists independently. For example, Nigerian Youth Parliament. And also it has to be efficient. You have to prevent wasteful use of resources. When it comes to capacity building in terms of leadership, we are talking about investing into skillful work of leadership through the process of creating organizational strength. It involves the use of available resources to establish competencies and accountability in areas related to skills, behaviors, decision-making, team management, and of course, cooperative growth. When we talk about building capacity in terms of leadership, we have to be mindful about how and what we believe leadership to be. And I know that my fellow presenter has a lot to talk to us about leadership because he has been in positions where he has got to make decisions for people because that involves leadership as well. Now, why is capacity building important? This is a very serious question when it comes to how we want to manage the affairs of our country moving forward at a grassroots level, at a state level, or even at a federal level. Capacity building is important because number one, it provides measures of improvement or measures to improve a system's ability or fulfill desired outcomes. Number two, it blends sound management by upholding accountability. Accountability is very essential into a smooth and successful run of government. And three, it provides a process for strong governance and dedication to assess and maintain outcomes. Now, at this point, when it comes to assessing is just evaluation or estimation of a given subject. You know, you get to evaluate your strengths or your weaknesses. Now we would dive right into where to target capacity building effort. I think when it comes to how we want to function as a body, we have to know what part we need functioning or what part that needs rearranging. Let's say, for example, to build capacity at an organizational level, you have to understand that you need to target your mission, your vision, and strategy. You have to target governance and leadership. You have to target resource development, service delivery, and impact. And of course, internal operations and management. Why is this necessary? There's a breakdown into every five listed items here. Because when you target where you need strengths to build on, you won't be wasting time on building other stuff. I've always heard about if it's not broken, don't fix it. I think I stand corrected when I say that there's always room for enhancement. Now let's look at mission, vision, and strategy. Mission, vision, and strategy deals with strategic planning, such as collaborations and restructuring. There's also organizational planning, such as achievable goals and objectives. And then there's accountability, which again comes to why we are slacking in today's global world. Accountability, such as rewardable rules and regulations. I think I break it down into reward or punishment. It starts from childhood when you are growing up and you do something wrong, your parents set the rules. So, what part of the rules are you accountable for? Are you getting rewarded for good acts? Are you getting punished or getting held accountable for wrong acts? And then there's also the system as a whole, such as methods of functionality. Units versus silos. Now, are we functioning as a component of a bigger body? Are we all functioning for a particular aim, or are we trying to achieve something? Or are we working as individuals, as silos, disjointed, disconnected, to the point where we won't achieve success because instead of us to function as a couple of units fused together, we are functioning in silos. Then there's also governance and leadership. Leadership development, such as leadership training, and thankful to this current administration that Honorable Daniel is working with, that keeps investing into leadership training because it's essential to building future leaders. There's also board development, such as methods of leadership and board selection. When it comes down to how we run an organization or how we run a system, how do we select our leaders? What are the criteria of selecting leaders? How do we get them to be functional? How do we make it easy for them to function? These are all into board development. And then there's success planning, such as strategies to attain success. What are the strategies set aside? What is the chronology? If we get out of power today and then there's a next set of future leaders coming in, what have we left behind for them to learn from? What are set aside for young people that are interested in governance, that are interested in leadership? What has been set aside for them to learn from? All this has to do with capacity building, because if we do not at some point invest into how we want Nigeria to be like or how we want our system to be like, we'll keep building for other people and leaving us in derail. Then there's also resource development. Resource development and capacity building deals with funds development, such as fundraising and sponsorship. How do we source for fund? How do we get financed? How do we get sponsored to make sure that we're moving in the trail where we're functioning, or we are sending people to school, or we're creating our own doctors, or we're creating our own engineers and using our own resources to fund ourselves and recycling that amount too. and then other plans for revenue generations. I think I've heard here in America there's something called, when you have an event to do, you source for fund, you either do a yard sale, you do a drive-by car wash, just something that is that can bring people to donate or give into the cause that you're working on. Then there's service delivery and impact. Service delivery and impact in capacity building deals with program design and development, such as community outreach. I am a firm believer in community outreach. I'm a firm believer in grassroots community outreach, because you can't deal with a situation by just telling people what it is. You have to get them involved into it. And also, when it comes to program design and as related to community outreach, you have to realize that sometimes it's not about the message you're sending, it's about the messenger. People would likely listen to the messenger of that message than what it is that you're sharing. Even if in the long run it's going to fully develop them and bring them to an expected end of success, they still won't receive it from you if the messenger is not the right person. It has to be a messenger that they can relate to, that they can understand, that understands their problem, that understands what it is to be where they are from. That's the kind of messenger they'll listen to. So when it comes to community outreach and program design, you have to realize that the messenger is as essential as the message. Also, there's also outcome measures as it relates to how do you account for all of this progress that you've made, such as surveys, gap analysis. You have to examine and assess the current performance. You identify the strengths and weaknesses, and then you draw a line to say, okay, here are the lessons learned, here's what we're not going to do, here's how it turned out to be, and how we're going to be better moving forward. And then there's also internal operations and management, such as human resources management, proper people and resource handling. I can't emphasize on this more than how it's said. You have to have proper people management. You have to have crisis mitigation. You have to have conversation mitigations when it comes to people not being on the same page. If you have a common goal and you don't know how to manage the people, when crises show up, you would be in a situation where you can't come out of, because you are not investing into proper management of people. There's also financial management, which when you source for fund and you get that money, how and why is this money acquired, and how do you account for it in the long run? You have to have balances and checks and everything written out, just so that there is a line of accountability and chronology when it comes to spending money or how the money was spent. I think I got to the point where I was sick and tired of hearing that you are given a particular budget to work with and you can't account for it. You have to have financial management when it comes to capacity building. There's also technology and information system, advancing with the global technology. Honestly speaking, we are an integral part of making other people's system very successful. But what about ours? What about our own? We're not putting much effort into making ours as more stable as the rest. Something as easy as broadband, something as simple as Wi-Fi. We have to invest into information and technology, because the world is vast and fast becoming global when it comes to technology and information system. We have to make sure that when that day comes and that system needs to run, that we have what it takes, and not just be investing into other countries' systems that are running perfectly fine. There's also legal and risk assessment. Before you embark into any project, before you embark into any action, you have to determine what is at stake, because you don't want any legal unbalances handing over your neck. You have to know where exactly to do stuff and what are the legal consequences of doing it. And then there's also volunteer development. I started volunteering at the age of 15. As at the time, I didn't even know it was volunteering. I used to work for getting kids back into school and making sure that they stay in school. And then when I got to America, I started volunteering as well, because here service above self is essential. You haven't done enough until you have done something for someone that you have nothing to gain from it. You have not done enough until you've invested into your community without anything to gain from it. And then also, we will talk about benefits of capacity building. I highlighted 3 benefits first, but there are more. And capacity building is a whole series, is a whole class that you have to take. It's a semester-long program. But for time constraints, let's talk about these three benefits of capacity building. One, it minimizes reliances on outside experts as source of knowledge, resources, and solution to in-house matters. When you build your capacity, you have no need for expatriates. You have no need for people that have their own going on and you want to go put that resources into yours. For example, if the world runs out of doctors today, I'm pretty sure that we're not prepared because we're not even investing into fully creating our own specialists and doctors to the point where we don't have to take our kids or our families outside of Nigeria or outside of our country to go somewhere else for care. We have to invest into it. We have to pour resources into education, healthcare, and of course, technology. Because the world, without that three, we will be behind where other people are still moving forward. It also fosters sense of ownership, empowerment, and control over future development. Like I said, chronology matters a lot. Timeline matters a lot. When we invest into all of these capacity buildings that we're talking about, we leave behind a sense of ownership, a sense of empowerment for younger generations. When they get to be in power and function, they wouldn't have to be relying on starting from scratch or tearing down what they met because it's a system that already works. It also strengthens confidence, skills, and ability to envision a necessary strategic action. You can't function without strategy. You can't function without having set aside a measure to account for what it is that you're doing. It also acknowledges growth, learning, collaboration, and success. These are all benefits of capacity building. Now, it's sweet to talk about all of capacities, how it is built, what it entails, without not trying to bring about the process of building capacity. I think this is where my presentation comes to a halt. But before we turn over to the speaker, I'd like to break down these processes. First of all, you have to engage senior leaders. I thank the current administration in Edo State for being invested into its youth and for being interested into building youth for future leadership. But they have to be involved as well because there's a bridge that connects both older generations to the younger generation. And if we disjoint that bridge, we are not learning. We'll just be online researching about people's work without learning for hand how you were in power as a senior leader, what you did, how you did it wrong, how can we learn from it? And then you also have to understand future needs. What are the needs that we have in Nigeria? What are the needs? What are things that need to grow? When you understand that future needs, you've developed future leaders according to what needs that we have. If we're behind in healthcare, if we're behind in education, if we're behind in technology, we would develop leaders as needed. And then we hire leaders externally as needed as well. If we say, okay, our healthcare system has to be better in the next 10 years, but we don't have all the resources available for us to get there, we can then hire external leaders to help us do that. And then we measure and improve practices. Like I said, what are your lessons learned? If you did something and it's working, write it down. If you did something and it failed, write it down as well, because that presents an example of how not to do it that way again. And then there's also building a culture that supports development. 100%. Building a culture that supports development. You have to have support. You have to support growth. You have to support development at all levels, from grassroots to federal level. This ends my presentation for this morning, and I'm open to taking questions at the end of our series. Thank you.
Wow, that was a very beautiful presentation. Thank you so much, Osase. I'm really happy. So to go to the next one quickly, we're going to be having another a quick presentation from the Majority Leader of the Nigerian Parliament, Honorable Najib Waziri. I'll quickly go through his citation before he gives a presentation for leadership. What is leadership really about? You'll find out. Before then, Najib Aminu Waziri is a youth developer, expert, security specialist. He's a lawyer that holds LLB from the University of Buckingham, currently pursuing an MA in International Security Studies from the Universities of Reading, and a mini MBA from the International Business Management Institute in Berlin, Germany. In 2020 July, Najib became an Oxford Executive Education alumni when he obtained his professional certificate in executive leadership from the said business school, University of Oxford. Najib has proven capacity in implementing policies, spearheading teams to achieve goals across a range of issues and sectors. Najib has a track record of using rigorous logic and methods to come up with effective solutions to challenging problems. Najib is a global citizen, a young thought leader who is not only highly passionate about youth development, national building, and grassroots inclusion, but most importantly, devoted to strengthening the capacity of Nigerian youth. This has been really expressed and honed in his active position as a House leader at the Nigerian Youth Parliament. He has contributed his fair quota to youth development and empowerment by providing multiple participatory opportunities for youth engagement and proactiveness, which in tender builds a transformed community. Najib has received numerous awards and recognitions and appointments from his work. To state a few, in 2017, Najib was part of the envoy that represented Nigeria in the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, where he was honored by the Queen and the royal family alongside other Commonwealth heads of state. Najib is a recipient of numerous awards from different bodies, and just recently, he received the Meritorious Service Award by the Student Representative Council of the Nigerian Law School for his notable contributions to legal professions and Student Representative Council. Najib is a member of the Nigerian Bar Association, African Bar Association, International Bar Association, and the Security Institute in the United Kingdom. He's an associate at the Chartered Institute of Albatross and also a fellow of the World Youth Alliance and served as a board of the Nigerian Young Professionals Forum. Najib is part of the several international development organizations which he seeks to add substantial value through driven impact. I present to you Honorable Barrister Najib Waziri. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for the warm welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon to you, or a very good evening. And to those of you who it's morning on the other side of the world, a very good morning to you. I'd like to appreciate my fellow presenter, Osasere, on her beautiful and warm, nice presentation. I told her she came prepared more than I did because she had a presentation, and I don't have a presentation to make. But when Daniel spoke to me about it, I saw hope into it because Daniel is someone who has been working hard to see that he improves the capacity of the Edo youth, and which I appreciate him. I think he did a program last year which he wanted me to come over. Unfortunately, I couldn't. As I always said, Daniel is one of the most active members we have in the Nigerian Parliament. So our Edo youth who are here, please, I call upon you to follow the steps. He's actually doing very well. Just a quick one, when we talk about leadership, people, there's a misconception about leadership. People think leadership is about titles, it's about position, it's about this and that. I have to be a chairman of a local government, members of representatives, and whatnot. Leadership, you have to understand what leadership is. Leadership is the ability to influence people. Plus, that is it. In the simplest form, leadership is the ability to influence people. There's a famous saying that leadership is it's all about getting someone to do something you want. So there are three elements of leadership. Is you have a vision or a targeted goal, you have a follower, that person you want to influence, and a target. So the vision, you get the follower to translate your vision, you influence the follower to achieve or translate your vision into reality. That is all about leadership. So people think, like one of the questions that came through, one was asking, what do you think about leadership of Nigeria? There's a conception about leadership and governance. I think we'll go into questions later, but yeah, a leader is someone who has the ability to translate a vision into a reality in the simplest form. Um, my colleague talked about capacity building, how you build the leaders through capacity building. I'll talk about more of the leadership aspect. You see, there are three types of leaders in the basic. When you narrow them, there are two types of leaders. You have the democratic or dictator leaders. You have the democratic, and you have what we call the laissez-faire leadership style. Democratic sort of leadership is the one we want in Nigeria and most part of the world. Is the one whereby, for example, the leader of an organization asks his team members, this is the goal and how do you think we achieve it? It's a two-way system. Democratic system of governance or leadership is a two-way system whereby the leader translates his vision into the followers and asks them for their opinion and their reviews so that they can collectively do it to achieve the goal. While the laissez-faire style of leadership is the one I say, do this or do what you think is best fit. There are some leaders that say, give me my pen or through deliver this to me via air or whatever you think. If you think by road is better or by sea. So those are other types of leaders. While dictatorship or authoritarian type of leadership is the leadership you have in countries like China. China, they run a democratic government, but with dictatorship and authoritarian embedded into democracy, whereby the leaders only dictate what you do. A plain example of dictatorship is North Korea. Kim Jong-un has demonstrated to the world that there is nothing like democracy and they're not ready for democracy. Some people, like JF Kennedy, actually once said that democracy is not the best form of government. When you do political science, you will understand that democracy is not the best form of government because there are a lot of constraints and challenges into democratic decision makings. Those are just the highlight of the three sorts of leadership styles. And when you talk about, sorry, I made some notes while my colleague was talking so that I can also look a little bit serious. You see, the qualities of a leader, you have to ask yourself qualities of leaders. You know, a lot of people say, I want to be a leader, I want to hold an elective office and want not to be a leader. But you have to ask yourself, do you possess the quality of who is called a leader? You can call them either qualities or characteristics of a leader. The most important one, it might not necessarily be the first, but the most important one is the influence, the ability to influence people. As a leader, you have to be able to influence people, their decision making. That's the most important one. That's the foundation of this. A leader has to be honest. A leader has to inspire others. A leader needs to have quality decision making, which also falls into ability to influence. A leader must be transparent because every follower likes to know that their leader is transparent and accountable to them. No followers like to be blind followers. So as a leader, you need to be very, very, very transparent, and you need to be honest. And the level of trust between the leader and the followers, you need to have the ability to buy the trust of your followers. That's a very important element. I've spoken to you about the three types of leadership and the qualities of a leader. There are types of also leadership as well. There's something we call transformational leadership. transformation leadership is, how do I put it? Okay. Let me put it in a layman's term, like they say. Is about the leader with a clear vision who is optimistic and it's different from democratic form of leadership, because both are very similar processes with inclusion and sorry, am I Daniel, are you even? Okay, yeah, sorry. Yeah, I was talking
Yeah.
about the okay, thank you. Transformational types of leadership. The leader has to be optimistic. The leader has to have a clear vision of what they want to achieve because a leader needs to be certain. Transformation leaders need to be certain of their goals, not say, okay, the target is to get to Abuja from Benin or one country to the other. A transformation leader needs to know that I want to get to this point by air, by sea, by train. That's a very important element of transformation leadership, and also there's something we call transactional leadership. So it's a little bit different about it's more or less like democratic and autocratic. Transactional leadership is about your rank, the police, the army, who is high, who is low. It's about dictatorship. It's all about compliance by order. Oh, I'm the boss, I give it order, you follow it. While transformation, as I said, has similarities with democratic leadership system of governance. There's some notes here. Yeah, I actually want to say that I want to make my presentation very simple. I don't want to go into theories of leadership, and I don't want to make my presentation a very long and boring presentation. I prefer an interactive conversation. So I want to call it that an end to my presentation, if I'm allowed to, so that we can have
Yeah.
with the listeners. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. So we'll go straight to the questions. Before now, we've had some people send in questions, and so I'll just ask you the questions. The first question is for both of you. I don't know who wishes to go first. What is your view about leadership in Nigeria today? What's your opinion? What do you think about the entire leadership of Nigeria? What do you think?
I think I'll let the ladies go first.
Najib, thank you for the honor. When you were talking about leadership just now, coincidentally, one of the classes I'm taking now is transforming leadership in healthcare system. And here's one of the precise textbooks that we use. When you talked about transformational leaders that are leaders that push for change, or transitional leaders that are leaders that from one method of power to the next method of power causes leadership to happen. I think my view is that with our current situation of leadership, we can do better. We can do better with leadership in Nigeria. And I say this to say that we are way past the age of ignorance. We are way past the age of, or let's just blame it on the ignorance of they don't really get it. Now the information is made available. We are dealing with the unwillingness to learn. We are dealing with the willingness to take change. We are dealing with the willingness to be the change. So my view with the current state of leadership in Nigeria is that we do have a long way to go. Even though we have what it takes, we just have to be willing to do what it takes.
Okay. Najib, what do you think? What's your view?
Like I earlier said, I think we misconstrue leadership and governance. I mean, both of them go hand in hand, but there's a difference between leadership and governance. Most, I think the person that asked that question is asking towards like the governance. That's how I interpret the question to instead of the leaders. Because if you talk about, you rather say, well, how do you view our leaders in Nigeria rather than how do you view the leadership in Nigeria? You see, I understand that Method of governance in Nigeria is bad. That's the honest truth about it. The method of governance in Nigeria is bad, and the system of governance in Nigeria is bad. The major issue we have in Nigeria is the constitution. The constitution of Nigeria, the 1999 constitution, is the major problem. All the problems Nigerians are facing now, the constitution is the genesis of this problem, because the constitution does not talk or cover contemporary issues. The constitution is not flowing with the 21st century issues. The constitution was made by our forefathers who were focused on only the issues. Now, when we talk about running a federal system of government, Nigeria, we talk we audio by audio we run federal system of governance. Everything is centralized into the federal government. The concurrent list and the exclusive list. The exclusive list is too long. The exclusive list is the list that only the executive or the presidency has the ability or the power, actually, rather ability to make laws on, like talking about security, armed forces, and a few other things like power. In Nigeria, we need to decentralize these kind of issues. In some state governments want to have their own independent power organizations, but they are not allowed to. In Nigeria, if you produce more than 1 megawatt, you have to put it on national grid. And just because you translate it international grid does not mean that power is going to come back to you. It's going to go back on how the federal government wishes to distribute it. So, yes, I know we have poor leaders. We have individuals who are in the position of leadership, who are in the position, who are in elective offices that have poor leadership skills in Nigeria. And I think it's the youth that have to change that narrative. Because I and you can identify that, oh, we have a problem. By identifying the problem, you have solved 50% of the problem. So now it is knowing how to tackle the problem. And how do we tackle the problem? We have to individually build our capacities. Let us not rely on me and you and my other fellow presenters to build our capacity. I have to hustle educationally, financially, morally, and whatever to improve my capacity to change the narrative in the minimum way I can do to maximum efforts. I think I hope I've answered the person who asked this question.
I would literally like to piggyback off of what you just said. When you say identifying that there's a problem, it's the start to solution processes. I can't agree with that. I think, however, that with our current state of leadership, we're still living in denial. Like you rightly said, the components, we're all components to good leadership. We're all components to achieving the type of leadership or governance that we're looking for. But just identifying the problem. And I think as you would agree with me, Najib, that as young people, we have stopped just talking about what the situation is and deciding from now on that we're going to be the change. Now, the only problem is the methods of operation that we use to put that change into effect. The method of action that we use to put that change into effect is the only problem that we still have. Now, when it comes to that, just addressing and say, hey, we have a situation, hey, we have a problem. Yes, it is the start to the process because you've identified what it is that needs to be nipped in the bud, but just merely talking about it would not necessarily bring the change that we are looking for until we understand what strategy is as it relates to leadership. So I can totally agree with what you said about it, because you're looking at it from the spectrum of how power and politics plays together, how leadership and governance are almost tied together but are different. And I totally respect that, because it gives an outlook to why we keep avoiding the elephant in the room, why we are not addressing the elephant in the room, why we feel like we're recycling. And I stand corrected. We are recycling bad attributes of governance. We are recycling bad characteristics of power. We are recycling bad characteristics of leadership. Why? Because we're refusing to accept the fact that we're still in denial stage.
Yeah, I agree with you. Thank you very much for that.
That was powerful. There's a lot of power there. I want to introduce my co-host, Onome Agbeje. She's been struggling with her network. I don't know if she's back now. Onome, can you hear me, please? Okay, I think she's not back yet. Okay, so we'll go straight quickly to the next question. is for both of you too. What do you think the youth needs to become great leaders? Looking at the situation of the country, what do you think, in your perspective, what do you think that the youth needs to become great leaders in Nigeria? Looking at the whole scenario, the whole activity, challenges that we have in Nigeria currently. What do you think? Thank you.
Give me the permission to answer the first. The simplest and easiest answer to that is stop selling your future. Do you know that? Have you ever been on election ground in Nigeria? There's something called vote buying in Nigeria. Whether at the election ground or before the elections, we sell our futures to certain individuals. They come out and tell you this and this and this, and then give you a bunch of naira or dollars or whatever the money they're giving you. And in class, you are following them blindly without actually, okay, there's left and there's right. This guy says he's going to do this guy. Who looks more, what goals are easier or more realistic to achieve? Everything, unfortunately, our youths, we have compromised ourselves too much. I have been in a situation with elective officers where they say, people are calling them accountable. They say, I bought your vote now. Why? I've already paid you for what you did for me. So why are you asking for accountability or transparency? There's no business between me and you. We need to, our electorates, it's also our responsibility. There were a few of us who are fortunate to understand these problems. We need to also, encourage and educate our other fellow youths to stop selling the future. Because that 1,000 naira they're going to give you, or 2,000, or 10,000, or 1 million, or 5 million, it will finish. But your future is long. We tend to just focus on short-term goals rather than long-term goals. So also on how to be a great leader as an individual as well, it's first and first, you need to have a plan. You need to have a plan. Understand yourself, identify your weaknesses, because being a leader requires a very, very important thing: patience and compromise. Patience and compromise is very, very important, because a lot of times your followers are going to mess up. You feel so frustrated. So patience is a very, very fundamental key in being a leader. Compromise is the ability to accept outcomes of decisions that were made in good faith, but ended up being negative results you wanted. You have to be organized. You need to have a plan. Okay, I'm 13 years old now. I want to be a pilot, or what? You need to have a vision, a plan. Before you are classified as a leader, you need to have that vision and a process of how to actualize that vision into reality. That's another fundamental aspect of how to be great leaders. Ask for help, learn, have mentors. Don't feel arrogant, don't feel rude. When you're wrong, accept it. That is one of the biggest problems we have. We never accept we are wrong. We always argue. And as one of my uncles said to me one time about 10 years ago, and I'm telling you that thing has, more than 10 years ago, that thing has actually helped me so much to be what I am today. He said, Najib, you have to be a greater listener than a greater speaker. To be a good leader, you have to learn to listen. Your followers have to learn, you will have to listen to jargons, and identify the key points out of it, rather than speak too much. So I think I hope I've answered that in the simplest form. Be organized, have a plan, be a good speaker, learn to ask for help, and identify your mentors.
Yeah. Thank you, Najib. Thank you for sharing that. I believe that one of the key things that you said that I took away from that is that identify your mentors. When it comes to mentor selectorship, right, you have to be careful, because if your mentor is a thief, you're as well going to learn from a thief, and he's going to only teach you what a thief knows. 100%. Now, when it comes to being a great leader, you have to first understand what it is to be a follower. If you're not in followership positions first, you will never be a great leader. And sometimes being a great leader means being a leader from the back, not just standing in front and just leading. It means understanding the pain that people are going through and knowing that even if it doesn't affect you yet, it is still a problem. I think that's one of the key things. And I think we can't overemphasize the fact that you need to be involved at the grassroots level of leadership. It starts from your home. It starts from characteristics of your upbringing. It starts from there. We can't actually disjoint it when it comes to leadership in an entire spectrum. We can't disenfranchise it. Why? Because it's a component that is tied together. It is linked in every way. The kind of leader you become has a lot to do with nature versus nurture. It has a lot to do with that. You are 100% when you said, you're 100% correct when you said picking mentors when it comes to leadership is very essential. I kid you not. If I had to ask 5 young people who their mentors are when it comes to leadership, they're pretty much thieves. Honestly speaking. And what is a thief going to teach you except the methods of operations or as a thief? That's 100%. If you see a leader that is worth emulating, a leader that's accountable to people, a leader that is a leader from the back and from the front, that's who you need to pick as a mentor. I kid you not, with the age of technology and with the age of social media at this point, when people tell me who their leaders are, I'm like, you don't even know that person. How is that your mentor when you have no personal relationship with that person? We select our mentors now based on what social media tells us is right and based on what society thinks is appropriate, not based on what works for us, not based on what the goals and the mission and the vision is. And aside from that, we have to generate a mindset of service above self. When it comes to leadership, I think the old ways of what you stand to gain has to go. I said it before during my presentation, you haven't yet lived or done anything till you have done things for people that you have nothing to gain from it. Till you have put self behind and service above, there's nothing that anybody can say to you that you would learn, except you have detached that form to say, hey, I know that I may not have anything to gain from this. I know that this has no monetary value, but it is for the good of all concerned. So I'm a stand on it. I will stand on it and I would work as hard as I can, work as equally as I can, even if I'm being paid for it. Because sometimes people will give you less the job, especially when there's no monetary value attached to it. People will do lesser of the work for you because there is nothing for them to gain from it. But until we have created and diversified that mindset of service above self, I will do it. Whether I'm being paid enough, I will give it my best because it is for the good of every person involved. I think when we understand all of those concepts, then we'll be in the right path to becoming great leaders. But till then, we're still learning.
Thank you, Sandra. I want to add more. I want to add a very different point. You know, as JFK said, ask what you can do for your country, not what your country can do for you. We have to learn to put Nigeria first and not us first. We have to learn to do that. Because a lot of times when you're around youth, it's always about what financial benefits can I get.
100%.
To do that, people say, okay, what is the end for me? It's always about money, it's always about financial benefits. We have to learn to compromise that. It doesn't come. Like, I mean, you don't grow. Even us, we at a point we're just babies. We don't get that rich or whatever you want to do. You have to work for it.
That's true. There's also the Hawthorne effect. You and I know what the Hawthorne effect is, where because of eye service, people would, behave a certain way till you leave. Until we realize that the Hawthorne effect would make us terrible leaders, and just be you. Work as hard as you can. Even if you have nothing to gain from it, it is for the good of all concerns. It is fair. It is pleasing. It will yield profitable or success to the point where we advance as a country. That should be all you should be worried about. Like you said, JFK said that ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Do you know that's the mindset that they operate with in systems of power here? Because if you step out of line, you're being held accountable. We need to practice accountability when it comes to becoming great leaders. And I'm pretty sure Najim and I are ready for the next question, because I think we have literally dissected this one.
I think we have to be a little bit fast in answering our questions and short answers to.
I know, so we get time constrained.
Daniel, please, next question.
Okay, thank you very much. I like that part. It's about what can you do for your country. It's not always about what your country can do for you. So there's a question here. It said, in a country where the leaders intentionally discourage the youth, they intentionally lead to deceit, how can a youth who wish to impact positively in the society strive in such a system? This question is so long. But I don't know, did you understand that?
Yes, it is as long as it is valid. If Najib wouldn't mind, I'd go first. And this is because it all ties down to your method of sense of reasoning or moral standing when it comes to how you relate to said leaders. I can't overemphasize the fact that poor leadership would result in poor governance and would result in the poorer masses and economic constraints and what have not. When it comes to leaders that are intentionally deceitful, and for young people who are aspiring to be leaders, you have to first have the mindset that you can't really complain about the problem until you are a part of the solution. Growing up, my mom used to shut me up real quick and say, hey, if it is a problem and you're not contributing to the solution, don't talk about it. Right? Until we decide to be the change that we hope to see, there's nothing that anybody can say or will say that will affect us as much. Now, when leaders are being deceitful and you know they're being deceitful, there's no need calling a spade a cutlass. You call a spade a spade. While you are working on becoming an overwhelmingly good leader, you have to first identify that, of course, we have bad leaders. Can we just move past the era where we try to downplay it? We try to make excuses for them. We try to make tribalistic excuses. We try to make religious excuses, because religious excuses is the worst one that we have, that we've sat on for the longest of time, and just call it what it is. But never get your eyes away from the prize. If the aim and the goal is to improve leadership as it relates to governance, that should be all we worry about. That should be how you train yourself. That should be how you invest into. You become involved at grassroots leadership. I've said it times without number. Leadership at the secondary level, at the secondary school level, at the university level, at whatever level at all, at the community level, at the local government level. Be involved in leadership and be able to sit on a platform where you call people out on accountability. Be able to hold people accountable as you would hold yourself accountable, because it's easy to point fingers to the people that are doing wrong, but we don't point fingers to ourselves for being a part of the problem. So when it comes to leaders' deceit, there's always going to be deceit. There's always going to be a leader who twists the truth. Let's not call them liars, right? For lack of better choices of words, we won't call them liars. We'll just say they twist the truth. There are always going to be people like that, but we have to rise above what it is and determine to be the change that we hope to see by holding not just our leaders accountable, but ourselves. Najib, I think I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Let me give you an example about why we're being deceived or whatever. We have to, it's the face you wear. The face you wear determines who you are, how approachable you are. Mm-hmm. For example, now when you smile, you're more approachable than when you frown. In high school or in secondary school, we have all gone through that stage whereby, oh boy, this teacher, make him collect something, make him change this thing for me now or something. Do you understand what I mean? Mm-hmm. There are some you do not dare approach because you know what you're going to get back. So when these people ever come to you with this kind of thing and you bounce them off, tomorrow, trust me, they will not come back with such approach. Mm-hmm. So you have to self-worth. That's in other words, self-worth. Because we don't know our self-worth. We don't know our worth. We compromise of compromise, the level of compromise is too high that to eliminate it is just really, really difficult. So I think that's in the simplest form I can explain mine. To answer, I want to answer somebody called Victor, Chuku Victor, not Chuku Victor, who said the issue is not about, he feels about my point about the constitution as a problem. You see, he said he feels that the people are the issue, not the constitution. He now gave an example of the issue of SARS that has been reformed to SWAT, but they are still doing what they are. You see, I disagree with you because it's the constitution that builds the guideline of behavior for people. The constitution is our guideline. Do this, you are held accountable. Do this and that. Let me give you an example. Until recent in 2020 that they amended the CAC Act, the CAC Companies Commission. A company can commit an offense and pay 15 naira per day. People like Dangote's company can do 500 years of committing the offense with just paying 15 naira. What does that mean? 15 naira, to people like them, what is 15 naira? So there are some reforms that we need. We don't need a constitutional reform or amendment. We need a whole new constitution in Nigeria.
100%.
We don't need a constitutional reform or constitutional amendment. We need a whole new constitution addressing the challenges of the current situation we are facing now. So to my friend Victor, I want you to go and understand what the constitution is all about, and you see the lapses in the constitution, you'll understand what I'm talking about. I think Daniel just went off. I don't know if Daniel.
I think you're 100% correct when you talk about not just the constitutional reform, but a whole new constitution for that matter. Because we've talked about this where we define stupidity as repetitiveness of the same thing, expecting a different result.
Yes.
Repetitiveness of the same thing, expecting a different result. That's never going to happen.
Yes.
And then we try to avoid the fact that it is never going to happen, and we keep saying, well, let's just tweak the word a little bit. I could literally see Victor's comment where he says they change SWAT, they change SARS to SWAT. It's like it's the same tumor, it's the same cancerous cell, but we're just going to name it something different.
Let me tell you another thing. As far as going back to the Fifth Assembly, the National Assembly, all of them have had the committees on constitutional amendments. Till today, they're under committee on constitutional amendments. Every time they're doing constitutional amendments, scrap this thing up and do another one. Come on. I think let's go to the next question.
100%, a good proposal would actually fix that. One that everybody can see transparency through. Not the fact that something happens, we see it happen, but there's no accountability. I think that's the one thing that has derailed our country so much. No accountability. There should be set aside strategies and measures to hold people accountable to the highest order. And I'm sorry if that person happens to be your family member, but there's accountability and they got to go through it. The mantle falls on you to repair your family name. It's as much as it is.
Thank you. Daniel, what's the next question?
Yeah, thank you. This is the last question, and it's from your knowledge about youth in Nigeria. What do you think they have? Do you think they have the right minds to become future leaders?
I think whoever sent that question just wanted to make us laugh a little bit, and we appreciate it. Because Najib, I'm looking at him like, well, yeah. Honestly speaking, are you kidding me?
I mean, no. Let me tell you. I mean, he's talking from experience. Experience. You know why? Because we youth have compromised ourselves so much.
100%. But also, and I'm sorry to cut you short, I think the answer would be an initial yes, but with a clause of but. I believe that we still have a long way to go. I think it's the question of, we talked about it, who your mentors are in leadership. Now, like I talked about, I said if your mentor is a thief, he's likely going to teach you tricks and guidance of a thief, and that's 100%. But I'm not going to take away from the fact that we have a lot of vast young leaders that are growing every day in different environs around the country and even in diaspora. Because if you look at the Western world, Nigerians are, I'm quickly going to drag this into this conversation. Nigerians are a core, integral part of people's and other people's successes out there in the countries where they are residing and getting education and building a family and whatnot. For example, when it comes to the current day COVID-19 vaccines, if you check it, you will see names. You can tell who a Nigerian is just by looking at their names. As a Nigerian, you can tell who a Nigerian is just by looking at their names. You would see contributing factors, contributing authors, contributing personnel, contributing researchers into creation of vaccines. Nigerians are there, but if I tell you that in the long run, how soon will Nigeria get a vaccine? How soon? Do we have leaders preparing out there, wearing armors and emblems of war? Yes, we do. Leaders that are literally investing without any support, without any backdrop. I stand on behalf of the people who have self-funded themselves to become a better person, to say that yes, we do have leaders strategically placed elsewhere, even if we have a lot in Nigeria too, but we just have to come to the mindset to accept the fact that we have got a long way to go. And without investing into capacity building and leadership training, it is a zero at this point. So Nadir, I literally would want to hear what you got to say.
As I told you, he's talking from experience. As you know, when you're around these people, when you're around the leaders, when they have this argument that they say, we the youth fought for not too young to run, but are we ready to run? You see, when you are ready to, it doesn't mean are you financially ready to run. Are you ready by capacity and qualities to run?
Good question.
You see, these are problems we have. We keep on clamoring for change or give us the opportunity, and we actually make the same mistakes or repeat the same things the leaders are doing.
That's true. Your mentors are thieves, so you'll be thieves.
Let me tell you this personality we have in unfortunately a lot of our youth, because they said out of 10, 8 out of 10 will give you the same answer. If you tell them once you get to an elective office, when you become president or governor, what do? They will say, I will take my own part of the cake first before I start working. So how do you, when you are just self-focused without trying to make a better society for your children and your great-grandchildren, how do you think there's going to be progress? Now we all look up to Nelson Mandela. What do you call this guy? Something man. This Indian guy. But
Mahatma Gandhi.
Mahatma Gandhi. You see why? Because of the kind of things they did, the kind of leadership they offered, self-service, service to humanity, sacrifice they made. We have a lot of them around here, but because they're not financing our pockets, we don't promote them.
That's the truth. We don't idolize them.
I have a problem with, as I said earlier, don't sell our future. Unfortunately, I'm sorry to say to our brother who is the current NANS president, the NANS president is 40 years. By the new national youth policy, he is out of youth. He's out of the youth league.
I'm sorry to step in, Najib. That's another issue that we're refusing to address. The fact that a youth commissioner is 65 years old. Which youth are you leading? Your age group?
No, he's youth by heart, not by age.
Well, yeah, right. It comes again to messenger versus message.
Technically. Yeah. Daniel, do you have any other question?
Yeah, basically that's it. I don't know if you have one word for our viewers out there before we call it a day.
I'll let
I think if there's anything the last election here in the United States taught me is that when a leader has undeniable amount of followers and loyalists, you can get whatever you like, right? But if you utilize that same strategy for the greater good, it's a good way to invest into capacity building. No man is an island, and moreover, when it comes to governance and leadership or capacity building as it relates to each other, we can't function in silos. We have to function as a unit body. It's like this. The motherboard is the component of what an entire CPU or entire computer system is. But the motherboard cannot function alone. Although a house sits most vital content. It still needs a power cable. It still needs even something as simple as a closure to screw it in and just make it functional. There are components to making a computer work. We are all integral components to being a unit. We need to discard the ideas of silos. We need to discard the ideas of single-mindedness and start functioning on a we capacity and start functioning on a us issue. So if it is I have a problem, it is not a problem, it's we have a problem, because even if it doesn't directly affect you at this point, it is still and should still be a problem for everybody to contribute to the solution. And I'll leave with the same thing I started with. My mom always used to say this, and I keep being thankful for that. If I ever have to complain about a problem, I should already be part of the solution. And I hope that you have taken time out to learn something today and be involved in grassroots leadership, be involved in your community building. Example, right? Najib, we're dealing currently with a security crisis in Edo State. I can't overemphasize the fact that there's a strategy that can work. They just need to invest into it at the grassroots level. You have to start from the basics of how do we get these people out of the streets into being productive and into recycling the success that we will get out of it. Because here's the thing we make mistakes with. We do something, it works out, and we don't have a timeline. We don't have a chronology. We don't have any documents to show how we made such progress. So by the time anything happens, we have nothing to fall back to. One thing is true. Power will always change hand, but the people would always be consistent and constant. So no matter who's in power, the ideal goal is that it is our Nigeria. We will do whatever we can to make sure it functions and works for all of us, regardless of who is in power. I think I'll leave you guys with that.
That's a very good point, because a lot of us are having this thought that this guy is PDP and this guy is APC. Because there are different options. We don't commend you for doing positive work. We always criticize you. So I think it's very good we join hands together, whether male or female, whether white or opposition, whatever party you belong to make your state or your local government or your town or your country a better place. Part of the things I missed in being, I want to advise our listeners and our followers, that is, to be a good leader, you need to ask for reviews. What do you think about me? What do you think about the decisions I made? And listen attentively. Allow critics. Hear criticism. Because if you say you don't want anybody to criticize you, then you're already failed as a leader. It's from the criticism that you actually, how do you say, improve yourself. So those criticism in being a leader. 2023 is coming, whether you're in the states, whether you have the reps, whether local government. In some states, we're going to have elections very soon, chairman elections, councillor elections. We have different timetable for elections, but generally in Nigeria, 2023. Ward chairman, councillor, chairman of the local government, House of Assembly member, House of Reps, senator, governor, president, whosoever it is, make sure you invest or identify somebody who you believe has the capacity and capability to lead you to the promised land.
That's true.
Let's not repeat the mistakes where we sell our future, because we are facing the challenges now. We are asking ourselves that our leaders are deceiving us. If our parents or our elder brothers and sisters had not elected them in office, we would have been facing this challenge. So now that we have the opportunity, we're old enough to vote, we're old enough to run for offices. If you have it, go out there, test the waters and see how you can make change.
That's true.
Thank you very much for listening to us, and I wish you a very, very wonderful day ahead.
One second before we go, I just had a question here that I think it'll catch our attention real quick. And before we say that, when Najib was talking about being involved in politics in whatever way and elections coming up, if at the end of the day your candidate doesn't get elected, it is still Nigeria. It is still your country. it is still worth fighting for. And that leader, whoever it is, whether your favorite or not, still needs your support, because at the end of the day, power will change hands, but that community needs to stay growing. That community needs to stay developing. That community needs to stay building. Those people need to get out of poverty, whether we like it or not. Whether you favor this political leader or that political leader, whoever sits in power becomes that mantle of respect. Respect it and keep pushing forward towards a better society. Because it's not about your candidate, it's about my country, it's about Nigeria, it's about the state we're from, it's about our community. It's not about our individual differences. And the question that Najib, I'm going to make sure you answer this question first of all, just in case I throw you under the bus. Just accept it. How do we ensure that education? How do we ensure that education systems are more inclusive and equitable?
Before I answer the question, something came to my mind. You see, when you're joining hands, be like Goodluck Jonathan. Jonathan accepted defeat and is promoting, working with Buhari to make.
Thank you. Now you're talking.
So, how do you ensure that education systems are more inclusive and equitable? That's you see, in Nigeria, it depends on where you come from. Every state, federal government has their own education policies. States have their own education policies. How do you mean by more inclusive and equitable?
I think she's talking about accountability. From what I understand by that, it's talking about accountability. It's talking about growth process, and it's talking about technological transformations when it relates to education. How do we become, for example, University of Ibadan has produced the highest levels of researchers you can ever think about. And I say that because I'm in the research world. I don't think there's ever been any research study that I did that I never came across a Yoruba or a Nigerian person with trace and back roots from University of Ibadan, but it's still not at the level of Harvard. Why? Why? So how do we make that work?
I think it's about it's always about building on what you are saying about the researchers from University of Ibadan. I think it's about your network. In the sense by network, I mean who you surround yourself with. You have to surround yourself. It's not about surrounding yourself with rich people, but people who share vision, people who are smart.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
People network. Who you share a common goal with. Mm-hmm.
People who you share a common goal with. People who see the future. People who see farther than you do. Don't always surround yourself with people behind you. Surround yourself with people who are far ahead of you. Then you follow.
That's good.
I need to answer. We need to answer this question. I still don't understand how it can be equitable. Doesn't mean. Are you talking about government schools and private schools? How you match them? I don't know if that's
or is she talking about the sellability of it? Are you talking about making it marketable or making it competitive? What exactly are you talking about? Your question is inconclusive. It is. But another thing that I got to draw out of here, it says, are the youths registered and coordinated within Edo State? And Daniel, I think as an honorable, we're throwing this back to you. And Najib, I need your backing on this. We're throwing it back to you. You need to have a pool of youth that if you need anything to be represented on there, you have an entire pool to pick from. Not just youth in various levels, youth with various attributes, youth that are educated, that are uneducated, it doesn't matter, that are skillful. You need to have a data pool, because if you have no data pool, you have nothing to work with. I've once said it before, until you build comfortable loyalists, you have not built anything yet. Even though Edo State stands at a high ranking of thriving and striving and succeeding in the nearest future, we still have no data pool when it comes to youth. We still have zero data pool. So go back into the streets, recruit youth as hard as you can. Let's invest into skills and acquisition building. Let's invest into our youth, because now you have the mantle handed over to you and you sit in the power of authority to have ears that matters in your presence. So utilize that, rally round, and create a streamline of youths.
Thank you very much. Daniel, that's you.
He just passed me up.
That's so beautiful. I was going to come in here before I shut the whole program down. I was saying, who employs a Megad? It's you. We employ the Megad. The Megad do not dictate for you. You dictate for the Megad. He's a security man. Okay. Now, it's high time for Nigerians to sit up, youth to sit up, your president, your governors, leaders, House of Rep members. all of these persons, we employ them. They are public servants. They are there to serve us. We need to start asking questions. None of these leaders want to be asked why. None of them. If you ask them, it looks like an insult. Like, why this small boy would ask me why? Or why this small girl would ask me why? It's an insult. Nobody wants to be asked questions. And it's the right time for us to start asking questions. As young people, we need to start asking questions.
Put
We
a
need
system
to be accountable. We need
That's
to be accountable. Every one of us needs to be
that questions
accountable.
authority. You're correct. Put a system in that questions authority. Go ahead.
Yeah. So definitely that was what I was going to say. I want to say a big thank you to Prince Uwagboy Student and Youth Foundation for supporting this program today. To Nebo TV, Mama Nekme, thank you so much. To our wonderful presenters, Ms. Olase Roma, thank you so much for creating time to join us this afternoon. Honorable Barrister Najib Waziri, thank you so much. And I'll leave you with this saying, change begins with you. Remember to use your face mask, wash your hands properly, avoid crowded places because COVID-19 is real. Stay safe and goodbye. Thank you very much. So, yeah, that's it.
Najib, hang in there. Just wait. We're still live. Yeah, wait, hold on. Just wait right there.
What happened?
We're still live. Hold on, y'all.
Yeah.
Don't say anything.
So who is going to leave? I think we can just leave, right?
Okay, you know what? Let's just leave and then Osayi, can you get us back on WhatsApp real quick?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, Najib, I'll see you right there. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.